Welcome to Lesson 8, Introduction to Photoshop Layers. We've been using layers throughout many of these lessons. I'm going to focus more specifically on the fundamentals of them in this lesson. Once you feel more comfortable with layers, you can expand your capabilities to create incredible compositions. You can repair images with layers and easily apply effects. So let me start by just creating a new document that's the default Photoshop size. I do want to make sure my background is transparent, and this just allows me to start with a layer instead of a background. I'm taking my selection tool, my rectangular marquee tool. I'm holding down my shift key and clicking and dragging, and I'm making a selection. Now I'm selecting Edit Fill, and I'm going to choose that I want to fill it with a particular color. Now I'm creating a layered file just so that we can do some exercises with it. So I simply want to select color, select a red, click OK, and then click OK again. I'm deselecting by pressing Command or Control D, and I'm going over to my layer panel, double clicking on layer 1 and switching this name to red square. Now I'm going to pull the layer panel out by grabbing it by the tab and putting it out so you can see it a little bit better. Instead of creating a new layer by just simply clicking on the Create a New Layer button, I'm holding down my Option key because I'm on a Mac, or you can hold down the Alt if you're on a PC, to bring up the New Layer dialog box so that I can type in here that next I want to put in a yellow circle. I can even choose a color to identify this layer. This does not put anything on my image area that's yellow. It simply identifies it in the layers panel. Again, I want to make sure I don't have a selection, and this time I'm going to the elliptical marquee tool. I'm starting about in the middle, and I'm holding down my Option and my Shift key to pull a selection that's circular from approximately the center. And then this time I'm pressing Shift Delete, which is the keyboard command for Edit Fill. I'm selecting color again, but this time I'm going to select a yellow color and click OK. I'm deselecting by pressing Command or Control D, or you can go under Select and choose Deselect up here as well. I'm creating one new layer, so I'm holding down my Option or Alt key while I click on Create a New Layer, and this time it's going to be a green square, and I'll identify that with a color. I'm going back to my rectangular marquee tool, holding down my Shift key, and this time I'm going to press Shift Delete again, but I'm selecting a color that's green. Great, so we're ready to get started. I'm deselecting, Command or Control D, and I'm switching to my Move tool. And you'll notice that Photoshop is unaware of any other layer other than the one that's active in the Layers panel. So even though I click to move the yellow circle or the red square, Photoshop is not helping me in that matter because it indicates to me that only the green square layer is active. Now I can change this quickly by, of course, manually selecting a layer before I move anything, or you can hold down your Command or Control key with your Move tool selected, and Auto Select automatically turns on so that you can switch to the layer as you click on different items. This is also something that you can turn on all the time up in the options for the Move tool. I typically keep it off because sometimes I don't want it on and it gets extremely frustrating. It's better to hold down the Command or Control key when you want it on, and that way it's off all the other times. I can also right-click wherever there is an intersection, and you'll notice that I can quickly switch which layer is selected this way as well. You'll also see something new in Photoshop Creative Cloud that says Isolate Layers, and all that simply does is it gets rid of the visuals of the other layers in the Layers panel so that you can see them a little bit easier. You'll see that in the Layers panel I can go back and get rid of that by going back to Kind, but I can also use other filters here as well. and we discuss these in the book in a little bit more detail. You'll notice that my layers are in the same stacking order that you see in the layers panel, and if I take the green square and I drag it down, it's now behind the yellow circle or behind the red square. You really have to think about each layer as being your artwork on a clear piece of transparent media because you're seeing through the objects. Now, the other thing that I can do instead of manually moving something up and down is I can have something selected. And if I hold down my Command key and press the right bracket, you'll see that it moves up the stack. Or hold down my Command or Control key, I can press the left bracket with the Command key to move down the stack. I can also take an individual layer and change its blending mode. And you'll notice that as I change the blending mode, I'm getting a different effect based upon what I select. Now, this blending mode determines how your layer is going to blend with the items below. And the outcome of what you selected is determined by what's on your layer and what's represented on the layers beneath. You can quickly go through these blending modes. I'm just selecting one at the top and I'm pressing Shift and the plus sign or Shift and the minus sign. This only works when you have the Move tool selected and you've selected one of your blending modes so that you can quickly navigate up or down that list. You can also change the opacity by using the slider or typing in a value into the text field. I'm going to return this back up to normal and 100%. And now I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key. I'm still on the Move tool and I'm going to drag this over a bit. You'll notice that by holding down my Option or Alt key, I can clone a layer. They're still in the same stacking order. I want to take this bottom one. I'm going to name it Green Shadow because I'm going to make it a shadow. This time I'm going to fill this object. I'm pressing Shift Delete. I'm selecting black and I am also turning on Preserve Transparency, which indicates to Photoshop that anything that's transparent should stay transparent, preserve it. And anything else can be flat filled in, and you can see that now I have that shape without making a selection totally black. Now Photoshop also recognizes layers for any other changes that you make. So if I choose Filter at this point and I select Blur and I select Gaussian Blur, you'll see that it's only blurring that one layer. And I can click OK and maybe pull the opacity down a little bit. Some people for shadows prefer to set up the shadow in the multiply blending mode as well. Now I've done this, but I can even come in and press Command or Control T or Edit Free Transform, and I can transform these items as well. Now I can resize this, I can get outside the corner, I can rotate it, or I can press Escape to say, I didn't really want to do this at this point. I am going to press Command T again, and this time I'm going to hold down my Command or Control key, and you can see that I can even distort a layer. So I'll use those checkerboards back there to make sure I have anchor points that are directly across from each other or close to kind of give this an interesting cast shadow look to it. And when I'm done, I can click on the Confirm button at the top, or I can hit the Return or Enter key. You can also use effects that you can apply real easily right in the Layers panel. So for instance, I can select the yellow circle and then come down and choose that I want to apply bevel and emboss to this one particular layer. And you'll see that when I come in here, I can not only change the shadow, I can change the size, the depth, and even the type of embossing that I have on this particular layer. And click OK. The nice thing about applying these effects, of course, are that you can turn them off or on, or you can go back in and double click on bevel and emboss and change it, or even add additional effects as well. These effects can be copied and cloned to each other. You can hold down your Option or Alt key and just drag an effect up to another layer to copy it, or you can decide to throw it away by just dragging the effects to the trash can. I want to show you one more thing with layers, and then you'll want to read up on the rest of the information that's in Lesson 8 for more information. But what I want to show you is that you can take multiple layers and you can press Command G or Control G to group the layers. The interesting thing about grouping layers is that you can change the blending mode for all the layers at once. If you choose pass through, they keep the blending modes that they already have individually, but you can override that by selecting a blending mode for a group. We've worked with layer masks in some of the selection lessons. You'll see that as a group, I can apply a mask to an entire group. So if I have a selection and I click on Add a Mask, you'll see that it masks the entire group. Or I can throw that out and say I don't really want to mask. Delete layer mask, yes. So in this lesson, you discovered some layer fundamentals that will hopefully help you to create better composites. This has been Jennifer Smith with Digital Classroom.